This morning, I'm going to be talking about Agni Yoga, an element in Agni Yoga called unity and the heart. I'm going to read the verse that this morning's talk is based on. This is a very, very powerful verse or sutra, depending on what you like to call the verses found in the books of Agni Yoga. If you are part of a group, whether your group is your family, whether your group is a spiritual group, or whether your group is a nation, if you are actively participating, you've invested your time and energy and interest into your family, your group, your nation, you're going to recognize the validity, the value, the profundity of this verse. So I'm going to read it through twice, and hopefully I'll read slow enough that you can you can write it down. If not, you can go to the book called Heart, which is part of the Agni Yoga series, and this is verse 368. 368. It's about unity and cooperation and enemies and irritation. Unity is the first sign that the teaching is not an empty sound. The teaching is a light on the dark path. It should be understood how caution is often needed, because the megaphone of space amplifies each sound. To the rejoicing of the enemies, the petty irritation is turned into a whirlwind. The enemy has a new joy to record. Despite the teaching, people act in their customary way. Now I'm going to read through it again, but not so slowly. Unity is the first sign that the teaching is not an empty sound. The teaching is a light on the dark path. It should be understood how caution is often needed, because the megaphone of space amplifies each sound. To the rejoicing of the enemies, the petty irritation is turned into a whirlwind. The enemy now has a new joy to record. Despite the teaching, people act in their customary way. Now here's a story. There was a man who was very separative. He once said to a sage, I really, really hate your lectures. When the sage asked the man why he hated the lectures, he answered, because you are always emphasizing unity over and over and over again. If there is unity, the man said, there is no success, there is no prosperity, there is nothing. So the sage says, well, that's your opinion. A few minutes later, the man said, I have a stomachache. Well, said the sage, that means that there is a separative activity going on in your body. Well, what do you mean? He asked. The sage explained, it means that your stomach is not working in harmony with the rest of your body. Well, is that good? No, it is painful. Now, let us discuss unity. If a person really understands the teaching, the first sign of that understanding will be seen in unity. What is unity? Unity is cooperation. If you are not cooperating with each other, then there is no teaching for you. Cooperation is working for the benefit of one another. It is also protecting one another. For example, Master Morya instructed his disciples in this way. He said, "Verily I say to you, watch over your brother and protect his heart from the pains of the world." This, he said, is an example of cooperation. If you are part of a group of people, but everyone is working for his own selfish interest, then there is no unity. If you are a member of a family, and everyone is going his or her own way, there is no unity. Do you see how simple this is? It's so basic. To have unity is to have cooperation with one another. To cooperate in a group, let's say, under the umbrella of cooperation, it can bring together the leaders from many groups. The leaders begin to build a heart-expressed unity. The leaders will gather together and say, let's teach each other. Let's discover and share with each other. Let's come together and talk about our shortcomings and strengths and make plans for the future. Now, I am talking about leaders gathering together, not followers. Followers are still gaining experience working cooperatively within the group. It is the leaders over time who have gathered experiences of the lack of cooperation. They've learned about the weaknesses in their group. They've observed the weaknesses in other groups, and they recognize now the need for the leadership to all gather together, to teach one another, to share one another. Unfortunately, this is almost just a vision at this point, because in spiritual groups, whether it's religious or spiritual, the leaders of these groups see themselves as one, not the oneness of all the leaders, but they only see themselves as the one and only leader. So if other leaders even gather together with such a person, that person will demean and belittle and put the other leaders down as insignificant to themselves. And this is what's going on today, unfortunately. But fortunately, we have this vision given to us by Master Morya, that at some point we want the leaders to gather together. I think this is what the United Nations is about and are practicing. So spiritual leaders could actually observe, make notes, even participate in non-governmental organizations and learn, about the whole process of unity, the greater ideal, the greater vision of what unity and cooperation means. To bring together the leadership of spiritual groups, there must be cooperation. If there is no cooperation, then there is no teaching. And there is no unity. When there is no unity, then what happens? There is decay. and there is disintegration. Decay and disintegration is the antithesis, is that the right word, of unity and cooperation. Now let me repeat the section of the sutra that I'm going to focus on now. It read, "To the rejoicing of the enemies, the petty irritation is turned into a whirlwind. Now the enemy has a new joy to record." Despite the teaching, see, people still act in their customary way. People who have not yet cultivated their heart will lead others into disunity. How does this happen? For example, let's say there is a problem between a married couple. The man is unhappy with certain things regarding his wife. What will heartless people do? Well, some are very intelligent. What they will do is drop only a few drops of poison into the man or the husband's thinking about his wife. These few drops of poison will create cleavages in the husband's mind. When he next sees his wife's weaknesses, then the poison begins to do its work. And it's no different in a group. So let's say that you have, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in a few minutes too, but I just want to expand your thinking a bit. Let's say that there is a person in your group that becomes disgruntled with the leader of the group, or believes that that leader is ignorant or naive or just plain stupid. Okay, that person will almost unconsciously begin to seek out the weak ones in the group. And in seeking out the weak ones in the group, they'll say, "Come on, have lunch with me." Or if you have time, let me treat you to a really special dinner. And then they get together for that special dinner or lunch, and that angry, disgruntled person that is trying to work against the vision and the leadership of the group, during the conversation just plants a drop or two of poison. A drop or two of poison is seeds of doubt. See, in the integrity, in the intelligence, in the beauty, in the wisdom of the leader. So the weak person who already has, see, a doubt in that leader or a doubt in the teaching, now will go back into a class or go into a meeting or gathering of some sort, and they begin to look, see, for that weakness that they already sensed. But now that that disgruntled person took the 2 drops of poison, put it into their consciousness, then that poison begins to infect the consciousness of that weak one, and it begins to build. Going back to the married couple, what kind of poison? They may say a few things to the husband to cause him to feel more unsettled. For example, what I've seen is where there is a happy husband and then an unhappy husband. And the happy husband begins to brag to the unhappy husband about what a terrific wife they have. "My wife gets up 2 hours earlier than I do every single morning and fixes a breakfast like you cannot believe. Pancakes and granola and eggs and crispy bacon. It's just wonderful." Or maybe even hot oatmeal that took 20 minutes to cook because it's steel oats. Okay, And the unhappy husband begins to think, well, why doesn't my wife do these things for me? Do you see the poison has already begun to work? Do not go to those who sow cleavages in your family, in your group, in your church or your nation. It is so important to see these things. Now I'm going to repeat what I said a little bit earlier about the group, just to make a point. In a spiritual group, a member may become angry with the leader or think the leader is stupid or ignorant or naive or just not doing their job, but that person comes in and says, look who I am. I can do this better than the leader, so pay attention to me. He instinctively goes to someone in the group that he thinks will polarize his own way of thinking. They talk about all kinds of things, the weak member and the superior member. And that superior member will place a few drops of poison into the thinking of his friends thinking about the leader. He has created doubts and created cleavages in the member's thinking. The same thing can happen where that disgruntled person will go outside of the group and go to another group of people that are somehow connected to the group or to the leadership of that group, and do the same thing and say, you know, I've been to their meetings. The leadership of that group is so disorganized. They're not working together. They're not cooperating together. They're not unified. What has happened is, let's say, the disgruntled member has now planted drops of poison into an associated group. And because of the nature of human beings, which is supercritical these days, which is the result of the last solar system, Wraith 3, these people begin to talk to those people. And those people begin to talk to other people. And pretty soon, we have a worldwide network of people who are looking at that group, saying, you know, something's wrong with that group. I don't want to participate with them any longer. There's disunity. There's a lack of cooperation. There is a lack of organization. There's disunity going on. And pretty soon that group begins to shrink and shrink and shrink because it is now surrounded with so much poison. These drops of poison go into the aura of the group. And if the core of the group is not unified, if they're not working together cooperatively, then the decay begins. And this is just like cancer. You know, the disease of cancer begins to infect all the cells. And initially, the infection takes place with all the weak members, or those that have left the group. And then they find other, you see how this is going? They find other weak people, and so on and so forth. And pretty soon, you have a major cancerous disease. Now, that's pretty heavy stuff. People who are integrated, who think inclusively, are people who have healthy hearts. They show the first thing or quality, that's a better word, the first quality that a person who is integrated and has a healthy heart demonstrates is they show respect. They show respect for each other. So respect is an excellent way to build unity. So if you somehow, by some way, have been caught in the net or the web of an individual who's trying to convince you that this group over here is decaying, what you can do in opposite is to increase your respect for the group that individual is trying to poison. You're going to increase your respect for those that they are trying to push you into disrespecting. So you're going to do just the opposite. And this is what's called tactica aversa, which is a powerful phrase that you can learn about in studying the teachings of Agni Yoga. The second quality that an integrated person with a healthy heart can be recognized for is by helping others. Let's say if your wife or husband is doing something good, assist him or her in that endeavor. Be united in your visions, your plans. Be united in your actions. If you participate in a group who is laboring for a vision, try to help the group. Assist the group in their efforts. Oftentimes, for example, a committee chairperson will say, well, I only want to do what I want to do because I know better than the rest of you. But if the person has unity in his heart, he will say instead, what can I do to assist the labor of the group? Do you see the difference between the two? One has an integrated personality, integrated and a healthy heart, and the other one is still standing outside of humanity, let's say. If a group is a viable group, a soul group, capital S, soul, a soul group, such a group's consciousness will be inspired by the plan of the higher ashram, and work with the leadership of the group. Or work with a leader who is in contact with the plan. Each person in such a group who is aligned or tuned in with the group soul, the heart of the group, will feel a tremendous responsibility to help in manifesting that vision into a practical, workable plan. But it takes dedication and sacrificial labor. To one whose heart is not yet unified, that one will say, well, let's just do things my way. Then how does this manifest? He will instinctively be drawn to the weak members of the group and say things. What is he going to say? He's going to say things that begin to cause disturbances or irritation. Going back to the verse, to the rejoicing of the enemies, the petty irritation has now turned into a whirlwind. Isn't that interesting? Sometimes it is hard for us to see the difference between a puppet and a spiritually independent person. A puppet cannot think for him or herself. This is very important to pay attention to. A puppet cannot think for him or herself and will always do what others command them to do. In other words, what their reactions or their elementals command them to do. However, spiritually mature people are independent or interdependent people. They act independently from their reactions, from their ego, from their vanity, from any outside controls. They are rather responding to their inner life. Such group members are aligned, each are aligned with the vision of the group. And in the harmony of cooperation and unity are dedicated the efforts of manifesting the vision. Each will be contributing his or her talents to that manifestation. Each recognizes his part in the plan, not his only part. He begins to recognize the talents and the parts that everybody have brought into the manifestation or manifesting aspect, of the plan. Whereas that so-called independent person that sees such a group as a group of puppets, it is the independent person that is planting drops of poison into the idea of unity and group cooperation. If we go back to the example I gave of a married couple, and where that happy husband begins to plant drops of poison in the unhappy husband, where that unhappy husband that's really unhappy with the wife, where they may not get a divorce, they're not happy. And if they're not happy, there's no harmony, and there's no unity, and there's no cooperation. So even if that marriage stays together, it's not unified. To have a unified, cooperative group is not to see the members of such a group as puppets, but to recognize their spiritual maturity and how they are in contact with their higher ashram, how they are in contact with the light and love and power of their solar angel, and how rather than allowing outer forces to control their nature, now they are so aligned and so in tune and so responsive to the plan of the soul. It's like a group of professional and highly accomplished musicians that are performing, let's say 108 accomplished professional, highly accomplished professional musicians are all playing together in a symphony orchestra conducted by a great one. And they're all working together in unity and harmony and cooperation. No one is saying, look, I'm sorry, I can interpret this music better than you can. They're all aligned to the composer, to the master that wrote that piece of music. If they're not, they're out on their keister. So each recognizes his part in the plan as his or her dharma. Dharma is defined as that which brings well-being to his soul. An activity that is the duty of his soul. Now, number 3, here's another point that represents a person who has a healthy heart and is integrated. Unity. He has unity. Unity helps him to strive toward the same goal within the vision. Striving means to make yourself better and better in all directions in order to meet the needs of life, see, at higher and higher levels. Number 4, unity totally cleans and evaporates irritation. If you are united with others, you cannot irritate each other. Isn't that interesting? And number 5, if there is unity between you and others, small and stupid things do not cause irritation among you. So develop unity in your heart. Compassion, gratitude, forgiveness, and unity are the best medicine for fighting against individual irritation, family irritation, group irritation, and even national irritation. In a sense of unity, you understand the needs of partners and of co-workers. But if you do not have that sense of unity, each of you goes in separate directions, and your actions begin to irritate each other. So let me repeat this again from the verse. To the rejoicing of the enemies, the petty irritation is turned into a whirlwind. The enemy now has a new joy to record. Despite the teaching, people act in their customary way. And number 6, irritation. Somebody does some small action that irritates you and then says, but I didn't do anything. It is you who have made it into a problem. You see, this irritation turns into a whirlpool in space. Enemies rejoice at this because it means that they were able to irritate you. And let me end. No, not yet. Okay. Coming close. Here's a story. It's a horrible story. But it drives the point home. Many centuries ago in China, if someone had an enemy, he would make 2 roosters fight with each other, then kill and cook them, and then serve them for dinner to his enemy. The irritation in the roosters' bodies would enter into the enemy's bones. It was a form of poisoning one's enemy. Those who create conscious irritation are the enemies who are creating such a poison within you and then rejoicing that you were irritated. So how can we stand against these attacks? With the greatness of your heart, with compassion. For example, you might say, well, I forgive them. And I'm also grateful to them for a few things that I have learned. But doing this, by doing this, you feel one with others. And instead of being irritated and killing yourself by creating a poisonous atmosphere, you let the irritation go. This is practicing the teaching. This is very important as much as possible that we try very hard not to originate conditions for irritation. Irritation is a wave that goes into our etheric, astral, and mental bodies and eventually infects us. Infects you individually, infects the family, infects the group, infects the country. You can protect yourself from it, for example, with a smile, or walking away for a period of time of what is irritating you. Regroup Listen to some music, write some poetry, walk in nature. And then you can think, he did something really stupid that irritated me, but maybe I've done millions of irritating things to others. See, and in that way, you put yourself back in balance and you can control yourself. To build unity in your family, in your group, in your nation, and internationally, we must begin to see the great qualities in those who are close to us, at home, in our group, and from around the world. We must start seeing them and bringing them out into recognition. Look at your husband or wife. Look at your group members and see their greatness. Let us say that your husband or wife is a great person, but you may not have yet acknowledged it. But you see the greatness of your friend's spouse. You do not see the greatness around you. Your husband, your wife, your boyfriend are very great, but you do not see it. If this is what's happening, it means that there is a mental defect that we sometimes have. So we must start seeing them and bring them into recognition. And now let me close with another quote from Master Moria from verse 369, Heart. He says, one can imagine the beneficent energy emitted by a unified work. Astonishing observations can be made by gathering harmonized consciousnesses into groups. So this is what Agni Yoga has to say to us about unity and the heart. You see how practical this teaching is? It's so practical.